I used to measure risk in percentages. 2% inflation, 5% correction, 10% worst-case drawdown. Numbers I could reason with. Numbers I could explain to clients when their voices shook and their hands trembled across my desk. "Colton, what happens if the market crashes?" I'd smile, calm as a priest. "We prepare. We diversify. We plan." I never imagined the kind of crash that ends with bodies in the street and the dead chewing through locked doors like they're made of paper. I never imagined the kind of planning that comes down to one question: do you die today, or do you live long enough to die later? My name is Colton Clay, and I wasn't built for the end of the world. But the end of the world doesn't care what you're built for. The day everything began, I was wearing a blue button-up shirt and a tie I hated. I remember that detail because it makes me angry now. Angry at the version of me who thought that was what mattered. Presentation, professionalism, the illusion of control. It was Tuesday, a normal day. I stopped at a coffee shop on the corner, same place I always went. The kind with neutral colors, soft lighting, and baristas who remembered your name. On the television behind the counter, there was grainy footage of an airport terminal. People running, someone collapsing, a security guard backing away like he'd seen a ghost. A ticker crawled across the bottom. Unknown. Viral outbreak. International travel. Suspended. A man behind me chuckled. Every year there's something. Bird flu, swine flu, whatever. Fear sells. I nodded like I agreed. That was my default. Agree. Keep peace. Don't make things awkward. I paid for my coffee. I went to work. By lunchtime, clients canceled appointments. The office group chat turned into a stream of panic and rumors. Somebody posted a video from overseas, someone convulsing on the sidewalk, then sitting up minutes later. That part was the first thing that didn't make sense. Then the rumor hit. They were biting people. I rolled my eyes. I told myself people were exaggerating. The human brain does that, fills gaps with story because story is easier than uncertainty. By the time I left work, the highways were clogged and the sky had that strange look it gets right before a thunderstorm, like it's waiting for permission to break. I made it home right before dark. The neighborhood was louder than usual. Sirens, shouting, engines revving hard like people were trying to outrun something they couldn't see. I locked my door out of habit. Then I triple-checked it. That night I didn't sleep. I sat on my couch with my laptop open, refreshing news sites, chasing updates like they were oxygen. There was talk of quarantines, of localized outbreaks, of containment measures. The words sounded clean, professional, controlled. At 2:17 a.m., my phone screamed an emergency alert. Stay indoors, avoid contact, seek shelter. I stared at the screen until it dimmed. Outside, something screamed back. It didn't sound human. It sounded like a person had taken all the pain they'd ever felt and shoved it through a throat raw with rage. I stood at my living room window, curtains barely cracked, and watched a figure stumble down the street. It moved wrong, like a puppet with cut strings. A neighbor shouted from his porch, telling the person to get away. The figure turned and charged. I heard the porchman scream cut off fast. Then the figure bent down in the shadows, jerking like it was tearing into something. I backed away from the window. I locked the deadbolt again even though it was already locked. Then the power blinked, once, twice, and went out completely. The hum of my refrigerator died. The air conditioner stopped. My house suddenly felt like it had been unplugged from the world. I waited for the power to come back. It didn't. My phone lost signal around dawn. Not gradually, just gone. No internet, no calls, no comfort. The quiet after that was heavier than any noise. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a bad week. This wasn't a news cycle. This was a new reality. And I had done absolutely nothing to prepare for it. I did what I always did when I panicked. I made a list. Kitchen, 2 frozen pizzas, 1 bag of rice, half a box of cereal, 6 cans of soup, a jar of peanut butter, a few protein bars, water, A Brita filter and whatever was in the pipes. No bottled water, no purification tablets, no plan. Weapons. One kitchen knife, a hammer in the garage, a baseball bat. I hadn't touched in years. Medical, some Band-Aids, old ibuprofen, a half-empty bottle of antiseptic. I remember standing there in my kitchen, staring at the cabinets and laughing once, short and bitter. A grown man, a professional, a provider of stability. And I had less survival readiness than a college kid on ramen. That day I tried to stay calm, tried to treat it like a temporary emergency. I rationed food. I filled every container I owned with tap water, like that could somehow outsmart whatever was coming. That night, the screams got closer. By day 2, smoke rose from somewhere beyond the subdivision. Sirens became constant. People stopped pretending it was normal. By day 3, I heard gunshots. By day 4, I heard nothing at all. And the hunger, the real hunger, the kind that makes your thoughts blurry and your morals negotiable, forced me to move. My neighbor Tom had always been prepared, not in an obnoxious way, not in a paranoid conspiracy way, in a quiet, deliberate way. Tom was the kind of man who fixed things, the kind of man who split firewood in his driveway like it was therapy, the kind of man who looked at a storm forecast and calmly topped off his fuel cans. We'd exchanged small talk over the fence for years. I'd always thought his preparedness was cute, like a hobby, like someone collecting baseball cards, until the world ended. Tom and his wife had gone to Florida 2 weeks earlier. Vacation, beaches, sunshine. They'd waved from their car, smiling. I remembered thinking, must be nice to take time off. Now I wondered if they were dead, or worse. Standing outside Tom's empty house, I felt shame hot in my throat. I had no right to be there, no right to break in and take what wasn't mine. But then my stomach twisted with hunger and my mouth felt like sandpaper. And I remembered the man on his porch getting torn apart. I remembered the screams. I remembered the silence afterward. Morality is a luxury you can't always afford. I walked around to Tom's side window. I found a landscaping stone. My hands trembled so badly I dropped it once. The second time, I hit the glass. It cracked like ice. I pushed it in, careful not to slice my arms, and climbed through. The inside of Tom's house smelled faintly of wood polish and coffee. Familiar, almost comforting, and unnervingly empty. I listened. No movement. I moved room to room, slow, expecting something to leap out of the dark. Nothing. Then I found his pantry. It was stocked like a survivalist's dream. Canned vegetables, beans, peanut butter, boxes of pasta, packs of water bottles. I stared at it, breathing hard, like I'd discovered treasure. And then I found the folder. It was in a desk drawer in his office, labeled neatly, Fallback Locations / Supply Inventory. I opened it and my mouth went dry. Maps, notes, coordinates. At the top of the first page, written in Tom's careful handwriting, cabin, primary, fallback off-grid, solar power, well water pump, fuel storage, MREs, plus dried foods, medical supplies, tools, plus defensive gear, radio equipment. I sank onto his office chair like my legs forgot how to work. A cabin, a real place, not a suburban home waiting to be looted. Not a cul-de-sac death trap, a place built to last. I sat there for a long time staring at those words, feeling something I hadn't felt since the alert stopped. Hope. Then the guilt hit. Tom had prepared. Tom had planned. Tom had spent years building security for himself and his wife, and I was about to take it. But Tom wasn't here, and if I stayed in my house, I'd die. I whispered into the quiet room, "I'm sorry." Then I started packing. Tom's garage was a supply store. Hiking backpacks, sleeping bags, fire starters, water filters, batteries, tools I couldn't name. I grabbed what looked useful, what made sense, what my brain recognized from camping aisles. A large backpack, a smaller bag, a headlamp, a multi-tool, a hatchet, a small first aid kit. I found a set of road flares and took them even though I had no idea why. Something in me said light is power. In his bedroom closet, behind a false panel, I found a safe. It wasn't locked. Tom had probably kept it ready for quick access. Inside was a revolver and a box of ammunition. I stared at the gun like it was a snake. I had fired a gun exactly one time in my life, at a range during a friend's bachelor party. I'd hated the kick, hated the noise, hated how casual everyone else seemed. Now I hated how badly I needed it. I took the revolver, I took the ammo, and I felt myself cross a line I couldn't uncross. Before I left, I filled my backpack with food and water from Tom's pantry. Then I stood at his front door and listened to the street. Nothing. I opened it and stepped outside. The sun was too bright for how wrong everything had become. And somewhere down the block, a figure shuffled slowly, head tilted, like it was listening for something, like it was listening for me. I didn't call them zombies at first. Zombies were fiction, movies, Halloween. I didn't want the word because the word made it real. So in my mind, they were infected. That helped for about 5 minutes. I moved down the street fast, staying close to fences, scanning yards, trying to remember every horror movie cliché I'd ever laughed at. The infected zombie was a man I recognized. Mr. Haskins, from 2 streets over. He used to jog every morning. He used to wave. Now his skin was grayish and his mouth hung open like his jaw had forgotten its job. He turned his head and I swear to God he sniffed the air. Then he started moving toward me. Not fast at first, but with purpose. My body locked up. That's something I didn't know about myself until then. How quickly my brain could become useless. How panic can shut off your ability to think. Mr. Haskins, what was left of him, picked up speed. I stumbled back, tripped on a curb, and hit the ground hard. He came at me, arms out, mouth open. I fumbled the revolver out, hands shaking so badly I could barely grip it. I pulled the trigger. The sound was deafening. It punched through the neighborhood like a scream made of metal. The zombie jerked and collapsed. For a second, everything went quiet again. Then I realized my ears were ringing, and my stomach lurched. I rolled to the side and vomited onto the grass. When I looked back, Mr. Haskins was still. I stared at him, my breath ragged, my hands covered in dirt, the revolver heavy like guilt. I had just killed someone, even if he wasn't really someone anymore. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt sick, and worse. I felt exposed, because the gunshot would echo, because sound brings attention, because the dead don't forgive noise. I forced myself up and started moving again, faster now. I didn't look back. Tom's folder had directions to the cabin. It wasn't close. It was far enough that I couldn't walk it in a day, especially carrying a pack. Too far to risk moving slow. I needed a vehicle. I found one later that day, a sedan with keys still in it, abandoned at an intersection where multiple cars had piled up like a child's toy crash. Maybe the owner had run. Maybe they'd been pulled out of it. I didn't think about it too long. Thinking takes time. Time gets you killed. I drove on back roads, avoiding the main highway because the highway was a parking lot of dead metal and desperate people. Everywhere I went, the world looked peeled open. Stores smashed, houses burning, people running with anything they could carry. And then, about 20 miles out, I saw my first group of survivors. They were standing in the road waving their arms. At first I felt relief, people, help, community. Then I noticed the way they stood, the way one of them held something behind his leg, the way another had his head turned like he was checking the roadside, a trap. My instinct screamed, "Keep going." So I did. I swerved around them, tires spitting gravel. One of them threw something. It hit my rear window and cracked it. I didn't stop. I didn't look back. And that was my second lesson. The living don't need to be infected to become predators. The sedan didn't last. About 40 miles in, the road became blocked by abandoned vehicles. I tried to go around and hit a ditch hard enough to rupture something underneath. The car wheezed, then died. I screamed into the steering wheel. Not because the car was important, because I could feel the universe narrowing. One mistake, one misstep, and the world eats you. I grabbed my backpack and walked. 2 hours later, I found a bicycle in an open garage. A kid's bike, too small. Then a mountain bike leaning against a wall inside the house. I took the mountain bike. I told myself I'd return it later, even as I knew later was gone. I rode until my legs shook. The world was quieter out there, away from the city. Quieter doesn't mean safe. It just means the danger moves in different ways. I passed houses with doors kicked in and blood staining the porch steps. I passed a gas station with bodies lying in the parking lot like discarded clothes. I passed a church with the doors barricaded from the inside and writing on the windows that said, "No room, God forgive us," that one stuck in my chest like a nail. Because I understood. I hated understanding. It happened near dusk. I was riding down a 2-lane road flanked by trees when I heard it. Not a single groan, not one set of shuffling feet. A chorus, a low dragging sound like wind through dead leaves. I slowed. I looked ahead, and I saw them, dozens, maybe more. A herd of zombies filling the road, moving as one slow, mindless wave. Their clothing was torn. Their bodies were broken. Some were missing chunks like they'd been fed on already, and still they moved. I tried to turn the bike, but the rear tire hit a pothole and slid. I crashed hard, scraping my shoulder and smashing my knee. Pain shot through me and I bit down on a scream. The herd turned toward the sound, like a single organism sensing a heartbeat. I crawled off the road, dragging my bike into the brush. My breath came loud and fast. I tried to force it quiet. The zombies approached. One by one, they shuffled past the edge of the trees. I flattened myself in the dirt, face pressed against damp leaves, praying they wouldn't smell me. A zombie stopped near where I hid. Its head turned slowly. I could see its jaw working like it was chewing on nothing. It sniffed. I held my breath until my lungs burned. After a long moment, it turned back toward the road and followed the herd. Only when the last one passed did I let myself breathe. I stayed there for another hour, shaking, waiting for silence. That night I slept in the trees with my revolver in my hand. I dreamed of Mr. Haskins's face turning toward me. I woke up biting my tongue to keep from screaming. 2 days later, I was close. Tom's directions were clear. A turn off an old county road, then a rough path into the woods where the cabin would be hidden. I could feel it, like a magnet in my gut. Safety, shelter, supplies. But hope makes you careless, and careless is expensive. I was pushing my bike up a hill when I heard footsteps behind me. Not shuffling, not dragging. Footsteps with rhythm. I turned and saw them. 3 men, dirty and tired, but very much alive. They weren't smiling. One carried a crowbar. Another had a shotgun slung over his shoulder. The third held a knife like he didn't even realize it. Their eyes locked onto my backpack. Everything in my body went cold. "Hey," the one with the crowbar called. "Where you headed?" My mouth went dry. Just passing through." He stepped closer. "That's a nice pack." I tried to back away, but the bike made it awkward. My knee still hurt from the crash. I felt slow, weak. The shotgun man tilted his head. "You got food in there?" "A little," I lied. "Not much." Crowbar man smiled, but it was empty. "We'll take it anyway." I thought of my empty pantry. I thought of the hunger. I thought of Tom's cabin, the one chance I had. My hand drifted toward the revolver. Knife man noticed. "Don't!" The shotgun shifted slightly. My heart hammered so loud I thought it would call zombies from miles away. Crowbar man said, "We don't want trouble. Just give us what you've got and walk away." That sounded reasonable. That sounded like the kind of compromise I used to make in life. But I knew what walk away meant now. It meant walk away into the woods without food, without water, without gear. It meant die slower. I swallowed. "Please," I said, and hated myself for the word. "I can't. I need it." Crowbar Man's smile disappeared. "Then you're choosing trouble." He moved, and everything happened too fast. My hand drew the revolver like it had its own mind. I fired. The sound cracked the air. Crowbar Man fell like someone cut his strings. For a second, the other two froze in shock. Then Shotgun Man raised his weapon. I fired again. He stumbled back, clutching his chest, eyes wide like he couldn't believe his body had betrayed him. Knife Man turned to run. I didn't shoot him. I couldn't. He vanished down the road, breathing hard. I stood there shaking, revolver still raised, staring at the bodies. I waited for guilt to hit. It did, but something else hit too. A darker thought. If I hadn't shot, I'd be the one on the ground. I sat on the dirt and forced myself to breathe. I wanted to cry. Nothing came. That scared me more than the killing, because it meant my mind was already adapting to what the world required, and I didn't know what that would turn me into. By the time I reached the turnoff Tom had marked, the sun was sinking. The path into the woods was rough, more trail than road. I pushed the bike, sweat stinging my eyes, shoulder aching, knee throbbing. The trees thickened. The world closed in. Then I saw it, a glimpse of something unnatural through the brush. Straight lines, metal, solar panels tilted toward the sky like silent sentinels. My chest tightened. I pushed through the undergrowth until the cabin came into full view. It wasn't a log cabin fantasy. It was practical, sturdy, reinforced shutters, a small windmill off to one side, rain barrels, a hand pump near a concrete well cap. It looked like someone built it with the expectation that someday the world would stop being polite. Tom had been ready. I approached slowly, scanning for movement. No zombies, no people, just wind through pine needles and the distant call of a bird that didn't understand the rules had changed. The door was locked with a heavy deadbolt. I checked the folder. Tom had written the location of a spare key. Under north porch beam, magnet case. I found it. My fingers shook as I unlocked the door. I stepped inside. The smell hit me first. Wood, oil, stored food, a hint of metal and canvas. Then I saw the shelves, rows of MREs stacked neatly. Dried rice, beans, jerky, canned goods. A medical cabinet with supplies that looked like they belonged in a clinic. A workbench with tools and spare parts. A radio station corner with antennas visible through the window. I laughed once, sharp and broken. Then I dropped my backpack and sat on the floor with my back against the wall. For the first time since the world ended, I let myself feel it. The grief, the fear, the exhaustion. I cried until my throat hurt. Then I wiped my face and locked the door. Because crying doesn't keep you alive. The cabin gave me something I hadn't had in days. Time. Time to rest. Time to think. Time to heal the scrape on my shoulder and the swelling in my knee. Time to learn. Tom had left notebooks, pages of plans, maintenance schedules, notes on solar output and fuel storage, instructions for the well pump. He had charts for inventory, lists of supplies, and even basic training notes, firearm safety wound care, perimeter alarms. I read them like scripture, because Tom's handwriting was proof that someone had anticipated this, that someone had built a path through chaos, and if I followed that path, I might stay alive. I learned how to check the solar charge controller, how to rotate the battery usage, how to conserve power. I learned how to ration without starving. I learned how to set a simple perimeter alarm using fishing line and empty cans filled with pebbles. Tom had even left a note under one of the shelves. If you're reading this, it means I didn't make it back. Take what you need. Live. Just don't waste it. I stared at that note for a long time. It felt like forgiveness, and I didn't deserve it. On the 5th day at the cabin, I heard voices outside. Not zombies, human voices. Low, cautious, close. My body turned to ice. I moved to the window slowly, staying low. Through a crack in the shutters, I saw two men and a woman standing near the well pump. They looked thin, tired, desperate. They carried packs. They weren't armed heavily, but I saw a pistol on one man's hip. The woman pointed at the solar panels. "Someone's here," she whispered. My breath caught. I backed away from the window and pressed my ear to the door. They approached. A knock. Soft, like they didn't want to announce themselves too loudly. "Hello?" the woman called. "We're not here to hurt anyone." I didn't answer. Another knock. "We're just looking for water," a man said. "We've got kids back at camp. We'll trade." Trade. The word should have sounded civilized, but I remembered the ambush on the road. I remembered that people smile right before they take from you. I stayed silent. The doorknob rattled. My hand tightened around the revolver. The woman's voice changed, harder. "We can see the panels. You've got power. You've got water. Don't be selfish." Selfish, like the world still ran on fairness, like hunger didn't rewrite everything. The man with the pistol said, "Open the door, or we'll open it." I swallowed. My mouth was dry. I thought about Tom's note. Live. I raised my voice, trying to keep it steady. "Leave, now." Silence. Then a laugh. "You got a gun?" "Yes." Another pause. Then the pistol man called, "You're one guy in there. We're three out here." I felt my heartbeat in my throat. I had to make a decision fast, because hesitation is blood. I stepped to the window and fired a shot into the dirt 10 feet from them. The sound echoed through the woods. They jumped back, startled. I shouted, "Next one isn't a warning." The woman stared at the bullet mark in the soil, then looked at the trees, like she suddenly remembered this noise could attract the dead. "Come on," she hissed. "Not worth it." They backed away slowly, eyes locked on the cabin. When they disappeared into the woods, I didn't move for a long time, because the cabin wasn't hidden anymore. Not really. People had seen it, and people remember hope. 2 nights later, I heard footsteps again. More than 3. I killed the lantern and sat in the dark with my revolver and Tom's shotgun. Yes, he had one, resting across my knees. I listened. They circled the cabin, whispering, testing. A soft tap against a shutter. My mouth went numb with fear. Then I heard a different sound, a distant groan, then another. The whispering outside stopped. I heard someone hiss, "You idiot, you led them here." A thud, a shove. Then the groans got louder, closer. Someone outside panicked and ran. The zombies responded. The woods erupted in noise, branches cracking, feet stumbling, a scream that turned into a gargle. I stayed still, silent. A shadow moved past my window. A body slammed against the cabin wall. Then another scream, then wet, tearing sounds. I squeezed my eyes shut, not out of pity, out of terror, because I knew if they broke through the door, I'd be next. Minutes passed, maybe longer. Eventually the sounds drifted away, the zombies following the noise of running prey deeper into the woods. When it was quiet again, I sat there in the dark, trembling. That night I understood the next truth. Sometimes survival is doing nothing at all. Not bravery, not heroism, just silence, just restraint. Just letting the world's cruelty consume someone else instead of you. And that thought made me hate myself, but I was alive. Weeks passed. The calendar stopped mattering. The world outside stayed broken. Sometimes I saw smoke on the horizon. Sometimes I heard distant gunshots. Occasionally I caught radio signals, fragmented voices, static, emergency broadcasts repeating old instructions like a prayer nobody believed in anymore. I learned routines. Morning, check solar charge, inventory food, pump water, inspect perimeter alarms. Afternoon, repair, reinforce, improve. Evening, eat, listen, watch. I built barriers around windows. I dug small trenches to redirect footsteps. I set spikes in places where a rush would slow down. I practiced shooting. Not a lot, ammo is finite, but enough to learn the feel, the aim, the recoil. I learned to clean the weapons. I learned to stop flinching at every sound. And slowly, quietly, I changed. The man who used to panic over market swings now evaluated wind direction and noise discipline. The man who used to wear pressed shirts now smelled like sweat and wood smoke. The man who used to avoid conflict now slept with a shotgun within reach. But the biggest change wasn't the skills. It was the mindset. I stopped asking, "Why is this happening?" I started asking, "What do I do next?" That shift saved my life. Because one day, I had to leave the cabin. Not because I wanted to, because I had to. Medical supplies were running low. Not the big stuff. Tom had stocked plenty. But basics. Antiseptic, gauze, antibiotics. I'd gotten careless with a hatchet and cut my palm bad enough that I needed more than duct tape and hope. In the old world, I would have gone to urgent care. In this world, I had to go into town. I packed light, quiet. I waited until dawn when the light gave me visibility and the dead were less active in deep woods. I moved along side trails, avoiding roads. When I reached the edge of a small town, my stomach tightened. It looked like a fossil, abandoned cars, storefronts shattered, papers littering the street like fallen leaves. I entered through an alley, and I saw them. Zombies, not one or two. A cluster of them near the pharmacy, drawn there by some past noise, lingering like flies. I crouched behind a dumpster and watched. They moved without purpose, but they reacted to sound. I had to be silent. I crept along the wall, staying low, choosing steps carefully. I made it inside the pharmacy through a broken side window. The smell inside was stale, rotting, sweet in a sick way. I fought the urge to gag. I found the medical aisle and grabbed what I could: antibiotics, gauze, alcohol wipes, bandages. Then I heard a voice behind me. "Put the bag down." My blood turned to ice. I turned slowly and saw a man in a dirty hoodie holding a pistol at my chest. His eyes were sunken, desperate. Behind him were two more people, a teenage boy and a woman, both holding makeshift weapons. The man said, "You're not the only one who needs meds." I swallowed. "I can share." He laughed. "That's cute." He stepped closer. "Give it." I thought about the cabin. I thought about the nights I'd survived by inches. I thought about Tom's note, "Don't waste it." And I realized something. If I gave them the bag, they'd take the gun too. And if they took the gun, the next group wouldn't negotiate. My hand drifted toward my revolver. The man's eyes narrowed. "Don't." The teenage boy looked nervous. Dad. The man wasn't a monster. He was a father. That hit me hard. But hunger makes monsters out of fathers. The pistol jerked slightly, and then a zombie groaned outside, drawn by our voices. The woman hissed, "We gotta go." Dad man didn't move. He kept the gun on me. The groan got louder. Footsteps dragged toward the broken window. The teenage boy panicked and ran. The woman followed. Dad man hesitated, split between stealing from me and saving his family. That hesitation saved me. I shoved the shelf hard into him, knocking his aim off, and sprinted for the back. His gun fired once. Shot went wide, shattering glass. The sound was a bell. The zombies outside responded immediately. I didn't look back. I ran until my lungs felt like they were tearing. Behind me, I heard screams. I kept running. I hated myself for it, but I kept running. When I got back to the cabin, I bolted the door and sank to the floor. I stared at my blood-stained palm and the bag of medical supplies like they were proof of what I'd become. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was making choices, ugly choices, necessary choices. I cleaned my wound. I wrapped it properly. Then I sat at Tom's table and stared at the wall for a long time, because the world had taught me something I didn't want to learn. There's no clean way to live through the end of everything. There's only living. And the price of that is pieces of your soul. A month later, maybe longer, I don't know, I heard something on the radio, a clear transmission, not static, not loops, a voice. Safe zone established. Repeat. Safe zone established. North of. The rest cut out. But it was enough to jolt me upright like lightning. A safe zone. Real people. Organization. Maybe a future. Or maybe a trap. But the word established sounded official. Planned. Like structure still existed somewhere. I stared at the map Tom had kept on the wall. I thought about leaving the cabin, risking everything for a rumor. I thought about staying here forever, alone, slowly becoming a ghost who eats and sleeps and listens to wind. And then I thought about Tom. About how he'd prepared not just to survive, but to rebuild. To live. I packed a second bag. Not to leave forever, but to be ready. Because the end of the world wasn't one event. It was a series of tests, and every time you survived one, the world offered you another. If you had met me before, you would have called me nice, polite, professional, quiet. The kind of man who avoids conflict, the kind of man who tries to keep everyone happy, the kind of man who believes preparation is about numbers. Now I know better. Now I know preparation is about truth. The truth that comfort is fragile. The truth that the world can change overnight. The truth that the person you were is not always the person you need to be. I am still Colton Clay. But I'm not the same Colton Clay who wore that blue shirt and drank coffee while the world cracked open. That man died slowly, piece by piece, on back roads and in dark woods, and in the sound of a revolver firing for the first time. The man who survived is something else. Not a hero, not a warrior, just a man who learned to adapt. A man who learned to move forward when fear begged him to freeze. A man who learned that no survival experience doesn't matter when the alternative is dying. Because the apocalypse doesn't ask if you're ready. It only asks one question. What are you willing to become to stay alive? And the answer for me is still changing every day.